This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. It's the last thing most people want to do when they're feeling sick and pretty crummy. Going to the doctor just to get a note saying you're too ill to work. In Manitoba, hundreds of thousands of sick notes are written by doctors every single year. And physicians say it's wasting valuable time. CBC's Mike Arsenault has more.
Manitoba is short on doctors, and Doctors Manitoba says writing sick notes is one of the reasons they're not able to help more patients. It's calling on the province to scrap sick notes altogether.
Eliminating sick notes is an easy step Manitoba can take, especially right now as the province looks for opportunities to add more healthcare capacity.
By definition, a sick note is used to verify an illness or injury linked to a short-term absence from work, school, even daycare. Doctors Manitoba says burnout is widespread among physicians in the province, and excessive paperwork, like writing sick notes, isn't helping.
If you count the number, it's over 600,000 Manitoba per year, and so that adds up to a lot of time that could be providing access to Manitobans.
The St. James Street Medical Clinic is almost booked up for the day. Doctors Manitoba says our province has the biggest shortage of family doctors in Canada, and eliminating sick notes would free up more than 300,000 appointments for patients, easing pressure on the healthcare system.
I think that their time is valuable and it could be spent in a better way than sitting and doing paperwork.
Health Minister Uzoma Azaguara calls the idea a great one and says they're in the midst of discussions with Doctors Manitoba about sick notes.
I know that the Minister of Labour is meeting and has had conversations with stakeholders in Labour about this very issue. So we're committed to continuing to do the work of how we can take further steps in Manitoba to make this area of healthcare better. And
Azaguara would not commit to getting rid of sick notes for sure. Doctors Manitoba says sick notes aren't a very effective way to verify or manage sick time away from work.
1/3 of sick notes, patients didn't even have symptoms, so when they present to their doctors, they're not even sick.
Currently, Manitoba and Alberta are the only provinces in Canada that haven't taken steps to eliminate sick notes. Mike Arsenault, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A Winnipeg semi-truck driver has been charged by police after a crash from last summer that left a couple with life-altering injuries. And a warning, this next story shows dash cam footage of that crash. The charges come more than 8 months after a tractor-trailer slammed into the back of the couple's SUV at Lagimodiere in East Mint Place, leaving it pinned between the truck and a second semi. The couple were left with life-altering injuries, and police say the 29-year-old driver has been charged with 2 counts of dangerous operation of a conveyance causing bodily harm. It's a problem that's been happening for years. Labor trafficking in Manitoba's trucking sector has been growing steadily, and rights groups say it's an issue that often goes undetected and unreported. But a new initiative is fighting back. CBC's Felicia Adam has more.
It's often hidden in plain sight. You've probably seen it happening, from employees at restaurants, construction sites, and to those delivering goods. Anyone can be a victim of labor trafficking or forced labor.
I would say hundreds, if not thousands, in Manitoba alone.
Rochelle Baker is on the board of the Manitoba Trucking Association. She says labor trafficking is common in the trucking industry, and while anyone can fall victim to it, the most vulnerable are those new to the country.
Holding a passport and harassment as such is enough to scare somebody enough to stay with that company long term because they don't know any better.
Janet Campbell is the head of the Joyce Smith Foundation, an organization that fights all forms of human trafficking. She says forced labor is rarely reported, often because victims aren't aware of the laws that protect them.
The traffickers will have them believe that they're the ones doing something wrong. They're the ones that will lose their papers and get deported from our country.
Alongside Crime Stoppers, Winnipeg Police Service, and the Manitoba Trucking Association, the foundation is launching a new initiative using billboards, posters, and flyers to bring awareness to labor trafficking and educating victims on how to get help. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Premier Wab Kinew is defending his cheeky approach to the trade war with the U.S.
Okay, this order, it's a wonderful order, it's a beautiful order. This order is pulling
He's been very active on social media on the subject, including this post where he imitated U.S. President Donald Trump signing executive orders. Canoe considers them friendly and lighthearted and an answer to what's happening in the U.S.
Hey, part of this is a meme war, right? Like they're talking down Canada. They're, going after our prime minister. So I would expect that whoever in the White House is doing that is going to have a sense of humor too.
Canoe says we need to be strategic and think long-term when it comes to dealing with the next 4 years. He says besides taking U.S. alcohol off shelves, he may look at taxing Manitoba electricity going south and preventing American companies from getting Manitoba government and hydro contracts. One Winnipeg City Councillor is scrapping a planned trip to the U.S. for spring break. Cindy Gilroy says she was supposed to go to Arizona, but due to the trade war, she's looking at Canadian destinations.
We want to send a message to, the federal government in the U.S. and also a message to U.S. citizens to really push their governments that this is not how you treat friends. This is not how you treat allies. And this is not how you treat people that are your neighbors.
Other councillors told CBC News they will go through with previously scheduled trips. Jeff Brawadi has non-refundable tickets to Nashville. Marcus Chambers is going to a business conference in Dallas. Both add they don't plan on any more personal trips to the U.S. for the foreseeable future. A congregation in Carman is coming to grips with the loss of their church after it was ravaged by fire this morning. It started shortly after 4 a.m. at the Grace St. John's Anglican Lutheran Church. The deputy fire chief tells CBC roughly 75% of the building's interior was compromised. Crews struggled as the floor in the front of the church was missing, forcing them to battle it from the outside. It was built in 1965 and serves roughly 30 families in the southern Manitoba town. So far, no cause has been determined. Well, future student scientists from across Manitoba First Nations are looking to make an impact. They're showcasing projects that one day might save the world, or at the very least, make someone's life a little better. CBC's Matt Humphrey checked out the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre's Science Fair.
DeMarcus Belanger developed an improved walking stick for visually impaired people.
It's powered by the Arduino and the 9-volt battery. This is a breadboard. These are male-female connectors, and this is an HCSR04 sensor.
Just one of more than 170 projects on display this year.
I see people with traditional walking sticks, and I feel like they're not as confident. That's why I made it, for confidence and for visually impaired blind people.
He carved it from lightweight tamarack. And Belanger isn't the only student trying to make the world a better place. Drayden Lequette and Hattie Babaker wanted to better detect mercury levels in fish and moose in the Lake St. Martin area.
You can even see here, immune, genetic, cardiovascular, respiratory, and gastrointestinal systems might have a defect all from this mercury. We need to survive on food that we've been hunting and fishing for the last generations, but keep going.
Many of the projects married modern science with traditional knowledge, like Taya Hastings, who used her knowledge of sage to soaps. She says the science fair gave her confidence.
I really learned how to use my voice and how to talk and not be so scared about stuff.
Students from more than 20 First Nations schools all around the province are being judged. Sarah Bell Garson from Fisher River Cree Nation went to nationals 2 years ago for her project, explaining how beans, corn, and squash help each other grow.
I went on a plane for the first time, and we got to stay at this really nice hotel. So many people, professionals, came up to me talking about my project and asked me what it was. I felt really proud of myself for making it so far.
This year, Garson tested the antibacterial effects of rat root, or weekay.
So that clear part around there is showing that it's fighting bacteria.
The winner of today's competition will have a chance to compete in the Canadian National Science Fair this summer. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Some future scientists there, Riley. Riley Lachuk in now. And Riley, it was a really nice afternoon for people to get outside, get a walk in. Well, we can.
Well, we can. Things are changing, Brittany, and we'll get into that because no matter where you are in the province, you're likely going to get some taste of this in the next 48 hours or so. So first, we have a snowfall warning for Flin Flon, the Pas, looking at up to 20 centimeters of snow on the ground by Saturday. Locally, I think we could see some pockets of around 25, which we'll get into. And northwestern Ontario, a winter storm watch, up to 15 centimeters of snow, blowing snow, and the risk of some freezing rain as we get into the morning hours on Saturday. So, I mean, mostly cloudy skies across the province. We did enjoy a little bit of clearing here in Winnipeg today, and I think that clearing will hang around long enough for us to see the lunar eclipse overnight tonight, that blood worm moon, as Earth gets in the middle of the sun and the moon, casting a bit of a haze, a red haze on the moon through the overnight hours tonight. So look forward to that if you can look up. We're looking at a low of -1 in Winnipeg tonight, and Brittany, starting around the freezing mark tomorrow. We'll talk about all of that weather when I come back.
Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
A piece of Canadian history is in trouble. Why the country's oldest retailer is facing potential closures and what happens next. That's coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Bay days may soon be a thing of the past. Canada's oldest retailer has filed for creditor protection. Hudson's Bay Company won't say what it means for Winnipeg stores, despite sources saying many across the country are on the chopping block. CBC's Matt Humphrey has the latest.
A Canadian icon and fixture of Winnipeg's history, the Bay is the longest surviving company in North America. But that survival is now in question. The company filing for creditor protection could be a sign of store closures in the future.
The staple in Winnipeg, so it's one of those places that you kind of just look forward to going.
And people have been going for decades.
What is it, like 355 years? Like that many years? Like when you think about, okay, Sears gone, like Eaton's gone, you know, the department stores, gone.
Locations have closed before. The one downtown shut its doors in 2020. The Bay says it's been facing subdued consumer spending and declining store traffic. Asper School of Business Associate Professor Chi Liao says it's part of a trend.
Historically, department stores have sort of catered to the middle class. And as that middle class sort of declines and the middle class is having trouble paying their bills because of inflation or whatever else, then the consumer base for the department store is in decline.
I remember going to it when Eaton's didn't have something that I really wanted. And it was just a place to go hang out as a kid, you know, 50, 60 years ago.
That would be too sad because they have like sales, you know, most of the time, especially on the weekends.
Well, I love the Bay. I've always loved the Bay, and really, I'd be very sad.
An affidavit shows the Bay employs more than 9,000 people across the country and almost 200 in Manitoba. We asked the company about closures, and they say no decisions have been finalized.
I mean, immediately you're going to have to close a large number of stores, have liquidation sales.
Liao hopes a buyer will come in and buy Hudson's Bay to take it in a new direction. Matt Humphrey, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Meantime, the world's biggest retailer has joined Manitoba's fight to get machetes out of the hands of criminals. Walmart says it will no longer sell long-bladed weapons online or at any of its stores in Canada. The move comes after the province imposed strict rules on sales of machetes, used frequently in violent crimes here over the past few years. Earlier this week, Amazon announced it would no longer allow online sales of machetes to Manitoba addresses. Well, they came out in droves for a chance to let it go. But now the stage is set. Casting is complete for Rainbow Stage's upcoming production of Frozen the Musical. And after 1,000 auditions, which is double the auditions the theatre normally gets, those took more than a month. CBC's Felicia Adam breaks the ice with the cast.
For the first time in forever, Frozen the Musical is coming to Winnipeg here at Rainbow Stage. And on Thursday, the cast met for the first time.
A cast is coming together. Soon, these 5 actresses will bring to life sisters known across the world, Anna and Elsa. 9-year-old Emmeline Arnold says portraying Anna is a lifelong dream.
Anna's a hero. She saved Elsa, and I get to be Anna, so I get to be a hero.
Are you frozen? You look cool.
Alongside Arnold, 10-year-old Carrie Castillo will also be playing Anna.
Anna's just so bubbly, and I really love her, and she can just make her sister feel better.
Also chosen from the hundreds who auditioned is 10-year-old Layla North. She says she's loved the story since she was 2.
It's kind of like you don't need to actually have a man or another person to find true love. It can be sisterly love.
For Julia Davis and Tiara Lee Watts, playing Anna and Elsa at Rainbow Stage is special. Both grew up loving the theater.
I think my first one was Peter Pan. I don't know when it was, maybe 2008 or so. But I've been going since I was a kid.
That seems about right. Yeah, that or Beauty and the Beast, I think. One of the two.
Everyone's looking good, smiling.
A full circle moment letting them inspire the next generation.
Do you want to build a snowman?
Yes, I do.
Come on, let's go and play.
Carson Natras is the artistic director of Rainbow Stage. He says with 5 months to go until the show starts, they've already sold a record amount of tickets.
It's not just kids for when the movie came out, it's adults from when the movie came out. It's kids who are discovering it just now. The story and the music resonates with people.
The cast will be center stage here this summer. That's when audiences can come get a glimpse of Arendelle and see the musical come to life. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
I bet they've heard those songs a few times.
And I bet there's going to be a few people building some snowmen.
Yes, and some others that would like to let your forecast go, I think.
I know, that too. I'm so sorry in advance.
It comes.
Yeah, let's dive right into it. There's a lot to talk about tonight. So we're going to start big picture here. We have an area of low pressure. This is developing in Alberta right now, and you can start to see the northern arm of that snow reaching into central and northern parts of Saskatchewan. This is going to move into northern Manitoba through the overnight hours tonight. So this is the main area of snow that has prompted those snowfall warnings for Flin Flon and the Paw. A large cold front arcs down way into the United States behind this. This brings a chance of some flurries into Westman through the evening hours on Friday, but as that Colorado low, that secondary low pressure in the state starts to move up into the Dakotas, this will spread a warm pocket of air into southeastern Manitoba, fueling that risk of some freezing rain into the Red River Valley, albeit slim. The further east you go, the more that risk diminishes. But as these two systems kind of fight with each other as we get early into Saturday morning, that's when we start to get into more of a situation where we could see some steadier pockets of freezing rain, particularly on the Ontario side of the border, but really in the southeastern corner of the province. I do have a risk of freezing rain in Winnipeg. It all kind of depends on the track and the timing of this system as it gets into the province and into the Red River Valley into the morning on Saturday. But certainly I think in the morning on Saturday, a few flurries quite possible. The further east you go into Winnipeg and into the Interlake, fairly localized and isolated in nature, but certainly you could see a few flurries into the morning. This does turn into a more of a snow event into northwestern Ontario as both of these systems wrap up over Hudson Bay into the day on Sunday. So snowfall accumulation, looking at a general 10 to 15 centimeters by this time on Friday for Flin Flon, into the Paw, even into Thompson, I think has a chance at 10 centimeters of snow. Enhancing those amounts as we get into Sunday, and even up to 15 centimeters of snow for parts of northwestern Ontario, noting that some of this will likely be starting as rain before it transitions over to freezing rain and then into a snow event, and really a trace to maybe a couple of centimeters in parts of the Red River Valley. I wanted to show you the likelihood that we could see some freezing rain. This is one of our forecast models here using our in-house forecast modeling, and it's these reds and these pinks that you're looking for when we're looking at the likelihood where we could see the regions with some of that freezing rain. So really travel into northwestern Ontario into the morning hours and really into the afternoon even on Saturday, I think is going to be quite dicey. You're looking at some icy conditions and certainly some snow and some blowing snow, because we are looking at our winds really picking up in behind this system. So +5 for Friday, down to -5 for Saturday and Sunday. Those winds, Brittany, northwest 40 gusting to 60, and we start to moderate a little bit by the time we get into next week.
All right. Thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
Well, we have much more to come right after this. Stay with us. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News, and we're back in just a few minutes. Justin Trudeau's time as Canada's Prime Minister is coming to a close. Mark Carney is preparing to be sworn in soon, along with his new cabinet. Ashley Burke has that story.
Behind closed doors, Justin Trudeau's wrapping up his last full day in office. The Prime Minister posting his farewell online, titled One Last Thing.
I'm proud to have served a country full of people who stand up for what's right, rise to every occasion, and always have each other's backs when it matters most.
His departing message, one of Canadian pride.
This may be my last day here in this office, but I will always be boldly and unapologetically Canadian.
After more than 9 years in power, Trudeau will head to Rideau Hall tomorrow and resign. Then his successor, Mark Carney, and his cabinet will be sworn in.
This is a group of people that need to be ready to face the threats that we are facing from the United States on the trade front.
Sources say after he won the Liberals' leadership race on Sunday, Carney's been planning a much leaner cabinet, a team of 15 to 20 ministers laser focused on fighting the trade war and this promise.
Change that builds the strongest economy in the G7.
Sources say these 3 ministers handling Canada's response to the trade war are among those expected to be part of Carney's cabinet.
Will be his prerogative to tell us who will be a part of his next cabinet.
Sources tell Radio Canada Stephen Guilbeault will be moved to a new role in cabinet, but he wouldn't say today.
I have served Canadians as their Minister of Environment and Climate Change, which has certainly been the privilege of a lifetime for me.
Mark Carney's transition team is currently planning what his first few days as Prime Minister will look like. Sources say he's expected to trigger an election sometime this month, sending Canadians to the poll at the end of April or early May to decide if he should be the one to lead this country in a time of turmoil. Ashley Burke, CBC News, Ottawa.
G7 foreign ministers have begun 2 days of discussions, meetings at a resort north of Quebec City. Overshadowing those talks is Washington's new foreign policy directions.
There's a saying here in Quebec, on notre pain sur la planche, so we have a lot to do together, and it's true. We have a lot of bread on our plate. We must meet the moment, and it is up to us to do that task. And we should not be daunted by the task. I think we should be working together.
Straining that unity, Donald Trump's 51st state barbs, the Canada and EU tariff wars, and the apparent U.S. shift on supporting Ukraine. Melanie Joly says she'll apply constant pressure on the tariff issue at the meetings, and Secretary of State Marco Rubio is under close scrutiny for signs of how much influence he has over U.S. foreign policy. Federal Finance Minister Dominic LeBlanc and Ontario Premier Doug Ford have wrapped up their meeting in Washington. They talked trade issues with U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick amid Donald Trump's escalating tariff war with Canada. Ford called the conversation very positive. Mike Crawley reports.
In the Oval Office, U.S. President Donald Trump is asked whether he'll back down from the tariffs he's slapped on Canada.
No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel. Or cars.
And then, alongside the NATO Secretary General, he talks about annexing a NATO member.
Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually. If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it between Canada and the U.S. Just a straight artificial line.
Premier Ford, what are you holding? Not the most encouraging tone for this Canadian delegation arriving in Washington to talk tariffs with Trump's Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick.
Canada exists, completely feeds off of the amazing economy of the United States of America. Let us build up our steel and aluminum so that we can protect ourselves. And by the way, we protect Canada.
Still, ahead of meeting Lutnick, Ontario Premier Doug Ford takes his anti-tariff message to Trump's favorite news channel.
Why attack your best neighbor, your treasured ally, that we're your number one customer. So this does not make sense. I mark my words, it will hurt the American people.
And when Ford emerges from the meeting, his tone is upbeat.
I can honestly say was the best meeting I've ever had coming down here. Shared a tremendous amount of views back and forth, and I'm feeling very positive.
Ford also says the meeting turned down the temperature between Canada and the U.S. However, there were no commitments from Lutnick to drop any tariffs on Canada. Another meeting is planned for next week, this one involving officials from both sides of the border. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Washington.
Now, the onslaught of those U.S. tariffs on Canada could spell hard times ahead. It will be felt company by company and community by community. Already hit is a steel facility halfway between Ottawa and Montreal. With that story, here's the CBC's Nicole Williams.
The trade war playing out on the world stage, now a harsh reality for this small community.
We are one of the cleanest steel producers in the world.
Iveco, the industrial pride of Eastern Ontario, announcing layoffs in the wake of 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum.
There's a lot of worriness, obviously, on the shop floor, and the people are concerned.
According to the union, a combination of permanent and temporary layoffs will affect 150 workers. That's about 30% of the workforce of the factory in the small village of Lorignal. And people here are well aware this could be just the beginning.
The tariffs change daily with the Trump administration, so it's quite difficult to make plans around that kind of hostility.
It's a serious blow to a community where most people earn a living at the steel plant or have a close connection to someone who does.
They're one of the biggest employers. Iveco also helps the other companies surrounding Iveco, like the providers, the other manufacturers like machine shops, welding shops.
Those deep-rooted connections mean the impacts will be felt beyond the factory walls.
Everything suffers from it. There's a lot of truckers who depend on that place, a lot of restaurants, all that stuff. It's a downward effect.
It's awful because the village is living with that. If there's no Iveco or there's no more work here.
Then there's also the fear that what's happening here may be a sign of what's to come for the rest of the country.
The damage is starting to kick in, and as this moves along, I think we can be certain that unfortunately more damage will be done.
The national union that represents steelworkers says government needs to step in, not only to help those here, but manufacturers across the country. There are 23,000 people employed directly in steel in Canada and 100,000 more in related industries. And so there is a lot at stake if this escalates or drags on. Nicole Williams, CBC News, Lorignal, Ontario.
From U.S. tariffs to Canadian recession. Economists fear that's the road we may be on and that it may be a short drive. The CBC's Chris Glover takes this look at what may lie ahead.
There'll be a little disturbance.
Donald Trump is firm his tariffs will not cause a recession.
I don't see it at all.
But business and political leaders are not so sure.
There's an irrational man who's at the head of the world's largest economy, and he's willing, I guess, to sink the entire globe into a recession.
It's a self-made recession by one person.
And economists are watching closely as North American stock markets have been tumbling.
The stock market's typically a leading indicator, and that's not done very well in the last few days.
What are the chances that Canada is going to be in recession this year?
The chances of recession seem pretty high to me.
The technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative growth in a country's GDP, but the C.D. Howe Institute takes more into account, including employment data, product orders, and building permits.
There's a lag to that data. So we very well could find out that that this first quarter was the beginning of a recession.
Canada exports roughly 70% of goods to the States, and each day $2.5 billion USD crosses the border.
There's going to be a readjustment period with supply chains, how connected we are. And so I think it's very likely, if these tariffs are in place, that we're headed for a period of turbulence here.
Economists say there are 3 areas we can control right away. Monetary policy, like the additional interest rate cut we saw from the Bank of Canada. Immediate government policy, like expanding EI, and structural solutions, like removing provincial trade barriers and finding new international markets.
You're going to need all 3. Hopefully that will help with our dependence on our exports to the U.S.
How can we recession-proof ourselves in the middle of this economic moment?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately, Canadians have been hit by 3 pretty significant negative economic shocks over the past 5 years.
Those 3 economic shocks: job losses from COVID, high prices with inflation, and high interest rates. And just like with them, the advice in a recession is to insulate your finances.
Right now, if you're in a relatively good position, reduce as much as possible your debt.
In the past 20 years, CD House says we've dealt with 2 recessions, the U.S. housing crash in 2008 and the start of the COVID pandemic, causing a recession that CD House says only lasted for March and April of 2020.
It was a self-imposed shutdown, right?
Okay.
So what's different, this was worrying this time around, is that big bump is unlikely to happen unless the tariffs are sort of pulled away right away. If the tariffs are kind of permanent, yes, they might be one-off changes to the price level, but they're going to have knock-on effects. Okay. So I don't suspect we'll get that big rebound.
And with Trump saying he wants tariffs to be permanent, that rebound could take months before financial markets and trade markets rebound with it.
Coming up, it's an emotional story you won't want to miss. Superheated fumes scorched this teen's airway and vocal cords after she was set on fire. Now she's bravely sharing her story and journey of recovery. That's coming up next. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Stay with us. It's been 6 months since she was doused in liquid and lit on fire inside a Saskatoon high school. Well, the 15-year-old can't speak louder than a whisper. She's finding her voice and strength to share the horrific story for the first time. This grade 10 student says she won't let this attack define her life. Dan Zakreski has her story and a warning. Some of the details are distressing.
Everything was like covered in flames. My face was on fire.
The teenage girl was set on fire in a hallway in a Saskatoon high school. She's speaking for the first time, telling us what happened that day. We're not showing or naming her because she's a youth victim of crime. It was her second day of grade 10. She was just coming out of her classroom. Witnesses say a girl poured liquid onto her head and then lit her on fire.
I was on the ground rolling and trying to get the fire out. And I was screaming like, help me, oh my gosh.
40% of her body was burned. The fire fumes scorched her vocal cords. 6 months later, she still speaks in a whisper.
My voice just kept going quieter and quieter. I think while it was happening, I inhaled a lot of fumes and it really scarred my vocal cords.
The kids were all heading for lunch at the time. They say it was mayhem. A fire alarm was blaring. They say a teacher tore off his own shirt and jumped onto the burning 15-year-old. She says she remembers the pain and then paramedics helping lift her onto a stretcher.
The fire was out and it hurt so much. I was on the gurney and I asked if my parents were coming because I just wanted to see them and I didn't want to die without seeing them. But I'm grateful that I'm still alive and I saw them walking into the school and I just said, hi mom, hi dad, and then they wheeled me out.
That's amazing, baby. You're amazing. You're amazing, sweetie. You're so brave and strong.
The ambulance took the teen to the hospital and she was airlifted to the burn unit in Edmonton. A 14-year-old girl was arrested at the scene. She was charged with attempted murder, arson, and aggravated assault. She told police voices told her to do things. She's pleaded not guilty and she'll be back in court here in July. Today, the teen is slowly recovering at home, taking classes online, talking to her friends again, and reconnecting with her favorite hobby.
Since this has happened, I'm not really able to play as good as I used to be because my hands can't move as good and it gets really tiring to play.
What did you like to play?
Metallica.
Her parents know her physical and emotional recovery will take time.
It's very uncomfortable, but she powers through it, and burn victims have to go through that journey. If you don't go through the constant exercise and therapy, the healing makes it worse. Scars form and it makes it worse. So she's doing a tremendous job in trying to do the best she can under the circumstances.
A long journey, yes, but it comes with a soundtrack by Metallica, of course. Dan Zakreski, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Really just an incredible story, and we're going to be bringing you part 2 tomorrow where we hear from her parents, so you won't want to miss that as well.
Yeah. Turning to the weather, and we are looking at some snow.
It's in the forecast. It's coming.
Yes.
Yep.
So let's start with your dog walking forecast as we get into your Friday. We are looking at a warm day tomorrow, so enjoy the day tomorrow because things are changing once we get later into the evening hours as we head into Saturday. So this is Daisy. Thanks, Gail, for sending this picture. And please keep yours coming to talk back at cbc.ca. So starting the day around the freezing mark in Winnipeg, east winds 15 gusting to 30. We get that chance of showers as we get into the afternoon. So I think a little bit of sun in the morning, and then we'll start to lose some of that as we get into the afternoon hours and we see some of that cloud cover building in, and a better chance of some showers into the evening hours, Later evening, looking at that risk even of some freezing rain through the Red River Valley and into eastern Manitoba. Temperatures look like this right now at +2 at the airport this hour, +1 in Portage, -5s, -7s back to the west. A little bit of flurry activity into the Parkland and still some of that snow that rolled through early this morning into northwestern Ontario, now making its way eastward, -12 in Thompson. So your overnight temperatures look like this, around the freezing mark really for much of southern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario, but a bit cooler into Westman, -12 in Dauphin, -13 in Swan River overnight tonight. Into the north, looking at -15s, -16s, 2 to 4 centimeters of snow starting overnight in this northwestern part of the province. Some lighter accumulation into Lynn Lake at -22 overnight. And Churchill looking at westerly winds, a bit breezy tonight, -28 in Churchill. And you can see that progression of snow as we get into the day on Friday, looking at 5 to 10 centimeters through the day tomorrow, and this will continue overnight into Saturday morning as well. So -11 your afternoon highs for Flin Flon, the Pas, -7 into Norway House, and -5 into Island Lake. These temperatures, particularly for Swan River and Dauphin into the early part of the day tomorrow, your daytime highs earlier. Once that cold front sweeps through, we'll start to knock those temperatures down slightly at around freezing into Westman tomorrow, +1 in Brandon, +5 in Winnipeg, +8 in Emerson. But look at these temperatures as we get into the afternoon hours, as we see that push of warm air starting to make its way into parts of northwestern Ontario, +11 in Sprague. Fort Frances looking at +13, and Brittany looking at +11s for Kenora and Dryden. Your 7-day forecast is on the way.
Okay, thank you, Riley.
You're welcome.
An exhibit at the St. Norbert Arts Centre is putting a spotlight on wool and its many forms. Shannalee Vidal has the story of 2 Winnipeg artists who've interlocked their styles to show how farm meets future fashion.
It's art you can wear. It also has a message about the cycle of life. I'm Shannalee Vidal, and I'm here at the St. Norbert Arts Centre. A new exhibit is showing that wool is more than just a textile.
Over and over and over again. You rub it back and forth in the palm of your hand. Eventually you can rub it on the table once it has some structure, but this is wet felting.
That's Maureen Winicki Lyons. The wool artist is creating long, kelp-like fringes of felt by hand to adorn a vest. Those fringes aren't attached by glue or thread. Instead, the felt is fused together.
The coils and the locks are needle felted, which is poking, violent poking, into the felt here, which is commercially prepared and perfect for this purpose. I think it's fantastic.
This item is part of a nautical-themed exhibit she created with designer Tijan Roscoe. Both women work with wool, but on opposite ends. Roscoe uses her background in science and architecture as her inspiration.
Mine is really more geometry and mathematics based, and then aggregation of the processes, and very architectural. And then on the other hand, Maureen knows her shepherds and the name of the goats and then the sheep, and it is just so close to kind of the origin of this wool.
This is the Hungarian raka.
Right. And then
these are the Navajo churro locks.
And then our pieces of cuts are integrated into both kind of a wool locks themselves, and then also needle felted pieces, so that they can kind of coil around one common circle to be worn around the neck area.
The work that I do represents man's most primitive attachment to wool, because people have been keeping sheep and using wool as a means to keep themselves warm and safe for millennia. And then so I'm like the cave woman, and then Tijan represents the person of the future who's found a way to interlock, not just through the act of felting, but by creating pieces of felt that fit together in ways that I can't even conceive of.
This is called cage skirt. The pieces of the flower components, they're cut out of thinner material and then embedded or interlocked into the thicker felt scaffold. So it creates this cage-like piece as a metaphor for fishermen cages in the bottom of the sea.
we hope to challenge people's perception of what wool can do and what felt can be.
And then the beauty of this particular piece is that they lock and then kind of give to it and expand and then collapse again. Maybe we can just kind of work with these two. Kind of amalgamate. This has a little bit of a give to it.
There's places that we could tuck in locks in this.
What do you think?
I think I like it.
Tijan Roscoe recently returned from New York Fashion Week. Interlock is on display until March 28th at the Women of Vision Gallery at the St. Norbert Arts Centre. Shanley Vidal, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Still ahead, why some in a small Newfoundland town are going crazy for a good deal. Stay with us.
All right, so we're looking at actually a warm day really across southern Manitoba into northwestern Ontario. Some parts of northwestern Ontario even getting into the double digits for Friday, +5 in Winnipeg. Chance of late day showers, maybe some freezing rain as we head into the evening. Winds northeast gusting to about 30 through the afternoon. Down to -5 for Saturday with some flurries through the early part of the day. -5 again for Sunday. Windy into the weekend. Looking at 0 on the way for Monday. And then we start to get some clearing and a return closer to seasonal by the time we get into next week. Highs of -3 for Tuesday, -2 for Wednesday, and 0 on the way for Thursday. Well, some people like me can get a little or a lot excited when it comes to finding a good bargain.
Well, people in one rural Newfoundland town are going crazy for big deals. Jenna Head has our daily lift.
It's a crazy concept, and it's just like a treasure hunt. Wooden boxes filled with stuff. The idea, dig through the bins, because what you might find is a wicked good deal.
I had a lady here yesterday, actually, she got a pair of shoes. She got them for $5. She couldn't believe it. She said, $5? I said, yes, my darling, $5. She was really happy about it.
Those shoes and most other items here come from Amazon. They are often returned items, sometimes opened, but always new.
Because what happens is people will buy something, they don't like it, they'll send it back. Then we'll get it. I can't tell you how we get it. That's a secret, but we get it.
And like the name, people go crazy for crazy bins.
Do you ever get a lineup outside the door? Lineups. But darling, we used to be lined it up. Saturdays we open at 9 o'clock. We used to be lined up from the dentist. The first morning we opened, actually, we're lined up from this door out to the road.
Phone cases, backpacks, clothing, coffee machines, vacuum cleaners, diaper genies, even stethoscopes. There's always something new. They've been so successful, Crazy Bins plans to expand. As for their Carbonear location, there has not been one dull moment for McCarthy.
We opened here on 28 September, and it's been crazy ever since.
Jenna Head, CBC News, Carbonear.
You never know when you might need a stethoscope, right?
I was just thinking that. Good to have one of those in the junk drawer every now and then.
Right, and everybody loves a good deal. Time to go shopping.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I should do that tonight.
Exactly. Well, that's all for us tonight. We will see you back here tomorrow. Have a wonderful night.
Have a good one.